Hey, welcome back to another video. We're going to stick to the Christianity topic here on this one. And this will be about another book review. The next book I read out of the 5 that I've mentioned in previous video. This is Believe, with an exclamation point, by Giuseppe Filotto, also known on YouTube as The Kurgan. Kurgan. A little bit about Giuseppe. He's an Italian by blood who grew up mostly in South Africa, and I believe he lives in the UK now. But he was very much not religious like me. He mocked Catholicism when his parents put him in a Catholic school when he was younger. He remained a staunch atheist for decades before coming to Catholicism. And basically, his book is about that. It is a testimony. I don't exactly remember what it was that pushed him over the edge. I have to look back in the book to be totally honest, but if I remember correctly, it was something similar to mine, in which he started realizing that evil was real and started looking into Christianity, started reading the history of the churches. He explains in his book and on his YouTube, the history of the church, and that is this. I mean, the church basically started with Christ and was, for all intents and purposes, the Catholic Church. And at the time, that's all there was. With the exception of Mark, one of the apostles who went down to Egypt and started the Coptic Christian lineage, which still exists to this day. And Coptic Christians are the ones you always hear about getting slaughtered in the Middle East. Or maybe you don't hear about it because they don't want you to know about it. But yes, Christians are being killed in the Middle East every day. And those are the Copts. C-O-P-T-S. But anyway, you have the Catholic Church. And about 1,000 years AD, it splits into the Roman Catholic West and the Eastern Orthodox. And the Eastern Orthodox pretty much remains intact this day. It's a different kind of church, but it's still very Christian. The Catholic Church had its own split again a few hundred years later with Martin Luther, who created Protestantism. Protestantism is basically picking and choosing what's okay, and as long as you have faith in Christ, you will be forgiven. It doesn't matter how many women you fuck, how many wives you divorce and behead, King Henry, that kind of thing. Now, there are thousands of Protestant denominations at this point, and Filotto talks a lot about that in his book. But what his book really comes down to is it doesn't really matter what denomination you've chosen. He himself has chosen the Roman Catholic, and specifically the pre-Vatican II Roman Catholics, which are hard to find these days. Most Catholic churches you go to today in your country will do a mass in the country's language. So if you're in America, the mass will be done in English. If you're in Latin America, it'll be done in Spanish, so on and so forth. That is not the way it was until the 60s. Before that, the Catholic Church always did their masses in Latin. And when they decided to change that, it was called Novus Ordo. So the churches you go to that are Catholic, being done in the language of that country, are Novus Ordo masses. Novus Ordo is part of Vatican II, from my understanding from Filotto's book. Vatican II was a council that was called, and they basically got all the high-ranking Catholic bishops and the Pope and all that, and they changed certain rules in Catholicism, and my understanding is that they laxed a lot of policies. The religion became less strict, essentially. And Filotto talks about that, and he also basically says that, the Pope is an imposter. He's fake. He's satanic. I actually have no way to disprove what he's saying there. And I don't completely call it into question. I'd like to hear more evidence. But from my understanding, Bergoglio, who is Pope Francis today, lived in Argentina during the times of Pinochet and helped round people up. 30,000 people disappeared during the Pinochet era. So, yeah, he has some pretty strict claims on Catholicism and what a Catholic is and what a Catholic isn't. But for him, it doesn't matter what denomination you are as long as you don't pick and choose things and you fight for your religion and you resist evil. That is the biggest thing about it. He brings a concept in the book that I love and had never really heard before, and that is the concept of a churchian. Most Catholics and Christians today are in fact churchians, according to Filotto, and I agree with it. A churchian, God bless my girlfriend and her parents, but her family and parents are total churchians. They will attend Mass every now and then, while at the same time mocking Christianity, hating it, and, praising Islam, praising abortion. All these things that are totally against Christianity, they believe in. Like, they go completely against Romans 12:2, which is the name of this channel, which is do not conform to the pattern of this world. And these churchians completely conform to the pattern of the world. The pattern being, kill your babies, don't have kids, have premarital sex, cohabitate before marriage, all that bad shit. Be gay, chop your dick off, doesn't matter. All that stuff churchians don't care about because they think it's bigoted and discriminatory, when in fact that is absolutely God's will and what is written in the Bible. That's what a churchian is, and he does a very good job describing it in his book. And essentially, you're good on any denomination according to him as long as you do not fall into the churchian trap. That's what his book's really about. It's a short read. It is hardcore to the H, capital H. I love it. It is the most hardcore Christian book I have ever read. Highly recommend it. It's super cheap and short. If you really wanted to, you could buy 10 copies and give them to people you trust, but it's a big red pill, and you should not necessarily start off with people who are not ready to hear that kind of a thing at first. If your goal is to convince people and they need a lot of convincing, Filotto's book is not the way to get them there. It is definitely maybe for someone who is more of a churchian, but not someone who's an atheist necessarily. Read the book. It is fantastic. I think just after hearing and reading about it, I'm going to read it again. It energizes you. It really does. It's a book that fulfills you with a spirit of Christ and a crusader. Honestly, it makes you feel like a crusader when you read that. And he actually argues that that's why the Catholics were better than the Orthodox, because the Orthodox just sat there while their lands were being invaded, while Constantinople was trampled. And now we don't even call it that anymore. We call it Istanbul because it's a Muslim city now. But the Eastern Orthodox sat there, took it, while they begged the Catholics from the West to come in and save the day. And we did our best in the Crusades, but in the end we lost the Holy Land. That is why he loves being a Roman Catholic, because he can associate them with the Order of Malta, the Templar, the Crusaders who did good shit. Anyway, great book. Highly recommend. I got 3 more reviews coming up on these books.